Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menashe. Happy first of the month, and on the first day of each month, we review the book of the month. In order to be considered for book of the month, a book has to meet a very simple criteria. It has to be impactful enough that it will either change your life or your perspective on the world. Now, whether it does or not, of course, is up to you. If you consume the content as a piece of entertainment, well, then you'll be entertained. But if you make the book part of you, if you internalize it, then you have a real opportunity at lasting change. This month's book is definitely worthy of the Book of the Month criteria. This book is by two of my favorite authors. Chip and Dan Heath are two brothers who are both university professors. One is at Stanford and the other is at Duke University, and together they've written multiple books, best-selling books, including the title Made to Stick and Decisive. Our book this month is called Switch. This book is dedicated to answering the question of how to change things when change is hard. The mind is governed by two systems, the rational mind and the emotional mind. The rational mind wants to get that great beach body, and the emotional mind wants the OREO cookie. But this book is different than what you might be expecting. It examines change at an individual level, an organizational level, and even at a societal level. It's well researched, and it shows the path through stories and examples. It doesn't preach at you, but rather guides you to solutions that you discover for yourself. One of the central concepts of the book is the notion of bright lights. Bright lights are those shining examples of success that you can copy. The concept of a mentor who's walked the path before you might be a possible bright light, but there's many others. One of the best and most powerful bright lights you can find is in fact your own experience. You could be a shining example of something that worked in your own past. That shining example can be a beacon of light for you to replicate that success, perhaps with a minor adaptation suited to the current circumstance. In the book Switch, the authors share the story of Robin Waters, a merchant buyer with little to no authority who transformed Target from a lagging department store that low-cost copied Walmart and Kmart to a fashion leader. Robin understood she had no authority. If she was to transform the way purchasing decisions were made, she had to tap into the buyer's emotional drive. The company culture was completely data-driven, and sales of last year's fashion products were used to determine purchasing decisions for this year. By definition, the company would always be a fashion laggard. Their process was overwhelmingly analyze, think, change. It was completely analytical, and she transformed the culture into a see, feel, change decision-making that was supported by the analytical approach. They didn't throw out the analytical approach altogether. Far from it. The early wins would be measured to make faster decisions on how to procure new products. When the organization is so large and so heavy with momentum, change often seems impossible. We often rush to judgment about people, about organizations. Someone who's inherently a good driver can become a bad driver. Put them in a traffic jam, 20 minutes behind schedule to catch a flight to a family vacation, and all of a sudden, lo and behold, they're a bad driver. They aren't a bad driver per se, but the environment created a bad driver. It's too easy to focus on the driver and make the driver the problem. But often the root cause is the environment, and if you want to change the outcome, you could try changing the driver, but it might be more effective to change the environment. Another core concept of the book is the emotional side of the mind is like a 6-ton elephant. The logical side of the mind is the rider. The rider attempts to steer the elephant by issuing commands and pulling on the reins. But if there's a disagreement between the rider and the elephant, there's very little question as to which one will win. If you simply convince people logically, they will agree with you, and you'll have direction but without motivation. And that's the key insight. Your head and your heart must be in alignment. The rider and the elephant have to agree. And if you don't have both, change won't happen at an individual level, at an organizational level, nor even at a societal level. There's the story of John Stagner, who worked for a manufacturing company, and John was so convinced that he could save his company at least $1 billion over the next several years, but it would require process change, not just a few minor tweaks. Convincing all his bosses would be an overwhelming task of changing inertia. So instead, John focused an intern to work for him for an entire term, researching how the company purchased a single item. They looked at how the company purchased and distributed gloves across their manufacturing plants. The intern discovered that the company was a buyer of over 424 unique kinds of gloves across all the manufacturing plants. They were from different suppliers, each facility negotiating their own prices. Student collected the samples of each of the gloves and tagged them with a price tag. All 424 gloves were placed in a giant pile in the center of the company's boardroom table. Sometimes the exact same glove appeared multiple times with different prices. One pair of gloves in one factory might cost $5, and the exact same glove at another facility would be $17. The senior executives stared at the pile of gloves, speechless. Only when they saw the magnitude of the problem, with just the gloves, a single item out of thousands, did they understand the magnitude of the problem they needed to solve. John Stagner understood that he needed to tap into the senior management at an emotional level, not just convince them with data. As you think about that, go out and get a copy of Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. Have an awesome rest of your day. Go make some great things happen. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.